I'm Julie Herman of Jaybird Quilts, and welcome back to the Fussy Cut Rock Candy Sew Along. Last video, we worked on fabric selection, and today we're going to work on our cutting. We're going to talk about the direction. Some of our diamonds are point up and down, some of them point up to the right, and some of them point up to the left, and we're going to work on our fussy cutting. So let's get started. There's so many possibilities with using the diamond shape for fussy cutting from a print. When we're working with rock candy, if you have something like solids as shown on the cover, direction doesn't matter. But if you're working with something like this, where there's clearly a top and a bottom, direction may matter to you. If that's the case, then you need to keep in mind that the diamonds in rock candy are oriented in 3 different directions. So 1/3 of them are oriented this way, pointing up and to the right. 1/3 are oriented this way, pointing up and to the left. And 1/3, the final third, are this way, pointing straight up and down. So you keep in mind as you are moving your shape around your piece, those orientations. So in my case, for the layout that I'm doing, I'm going to cut 3 fussy cut shapes from each of these fabrics, 1 in each of the orientations. So I already cut these to show you these 3 examples. And now I'm going to cut 3 pieces from this fabric. So I'm going to just move my piece around, and some shapes, this one could be up and down. This character fits this way, and this character fits this way. Where some of them are naturally more inclined to fit a certain way. So this character kind of wants to fit this way, which if you look is not technically one of the ways we need. So I have to keep in mind, would I want it pointed up like this? Would I be okay? I think I'd be okay with it kind of being in this orientation on its side. I don't think that looks too unnatural. But some of them are going to work better in some directions than others. So this one works well pointing up to the right. This character looks like I can do either that way or that way. If I go up and down, kind of wants to interfere with that one, but it's a little tight to get both. I could, but then I'm losing that tail. And I think there's enough other good places in here that I don't want to automatically just lose that tail. One last thing before I get started is I'm working here with a fat 1/8. And if you have a similar cut, one thing you do want to keep in mind if you are working on 2 projects at once, so for instance, I'm doing rock candy and candy dish, is where am I cutting this piece? For this design, it's not as important because there's so many different places to cut, so I'm going to have somewhere to cut the hexagon down here. But for some of the other prints, like the deer, for example, I only have 3 deer. So if I want one to be my hexagon, then the other 2 can be here, and I might be able to get this, but if I only had 3 deer, I'd have to make sure that my 3rd piece for rock candy was a flower. So just something to think about before you jump right on into cutting your fabrics is what else am I doing with these fabrics to make sure that you have enough. That being said, let's jump on into how we're going to cut our diamonds from this fabric. So I think the first one that I'm going to do is, I think I'm going to cut this one like this, I think. Yeah. So I think I'm going to cut this one like this. And so my piece has these center crosshairs that help me in my alignment so that I can decide exactly where it is. And I don't need to worry about grain here. Even if I was worrying about grain, 2 are going to be straight grain, 2 are going to be bias. So if cutting your piece best this way works, that's okay that all 4 are bias. So I'm going to line it up, and I am right-handed, so if you're left-handed, this is going to be reverse. We want to make sure that we are safe with our rotary cutter. You never want to cut towards yourself. It's okay if you kind of like pizza cutter up and back a tiny bit, but you never want to angle the blade towards yourself. So I'm going to kind of arrange it so that I can do this cut, and this cut, and then I'm going to stop and move my piece. Okay, hold that in place. And I'm going to make sure that I cut a little bit past my shape, but not too far. You don't want to go all the way into here because you might still be able to use that guy for something else. And if you cut too far into your fabric, you won't be able to do that. So now I can kind of say this slides, that's okay, we can realign it. So we're just going to lay our fabric flat again, kind of line this piece up. And this is where it's helpful that I've already cut a couple sides. So I've cut both of these and this flat one here. And now I'm going to repeat to cut the final 3 sides. Okay. And there we go. So now I have my up and to the right one. And so I still need my up to the left and my straight up and down. So I think I'm going to go with this guy for that, maybe. Or do I want to go down here? If I do I have enough room? So this is another thing to think about is, do I have enough room? Now, yes, I have more fabric down here. I could always cut this one. But if you're wondering if you have enough room, one little trick I like to do is take an already cut piece and lay it over where I'm going to be. And then I can move my ruler, and now I see that I won't be able to cut both of these without having to move down to another piece because they're going to interfere with each other. So let's see, if I cut that one there, yeah, then I can cut this here. It's really close, but I can fit it. So I think that's what I'm going to do, because the other option, if I cut this one up here, I'd have to move this one all the way down here. So I'm going to cut this one next. I want this one to be my up and to the left, and that's where we talked about I'm going to kind of angle the character this way a little bit. So again, I'm going to move my fabric so that I'll be able to cut 3 sides comfortably. Never cut more than you feel like you can comfortably cut at a time. If you have a rotating mat, that can be handy. So you can just rotate the whole mat here. It's just a single layer of fabric, so it's not too hard to move. And usually my Fussy Cut Shape doesn't shift too much. I always double check no matter what. This is definitely one of those measure twice, cut once. Don't want to cut into your precious fabric any more than you have to. Okay. So that is my up and to the left one. And for my straight up and down, I don't really like that one. I think I really do like that one hugging the apple, which I already cut out of this one. I could do that, but I already did use this one up to the right. So I think I want a different character, just personal preference. So I'm gonna line this one up and make sure that it's on the fabric there. And it's extra helpful here how you have the dark outline, that's our 1/4 inch, because I can see that down here where part of this character is going to be in it, but it's not going to be seen in the final piece because it's in my seam allowance. So it helps you as kind of like a viewfinder to know exactly what you're going to see in the final piece. So again, I'm going to make 3 cuts. Now it's kind of loose here because we had already cut another one, and that happens. That's okay. Sometimes it's even helpful. You can then push your fabric a little more out of the way to line things up. So fussy cutting does make your fabric into a little bit of Swiss cheese, but that's okay. I leave my fabric like this. So I'll set this aside and get ready to do candy dish, and it looks like I could cut this one here, or even both of those, or this one. I have 4 different options, 1, 2, 3, at least 4 options left for candy dish. And you might say, well, what are you going to do with up here? The answer is, I'm not sure yet. And that's okay. I'm just going to leave my fabric as is. You know, I might be working on something. I can definitely get some half triangles here and there. I might work on something where I need some triangles, and I can get one up here. I can get one up here. I can get another one there. And I could even, if I wanted to, fussy cut a character into one of my triangles, or I could just focus on using up my background fabric. So I still see a lot of usable fabric here, so I will just fold this up and stick this back in my stash and move on to my next fabric. So without cutting, I'm just going to quickly show you what I plan to do with the rest of the fabrics. Again, I want one in each direction. So with this one, I've got the hedgehog, and I have two different hedgehogs. I've got one kind of forward facing to the right and one to the left. So they all seem to fit in all three orientations. So I'm just going to pick any three of my little ones here and cut them out with the purple and with the corally red. And then let's flip my deer around. So again, depending on if you're working from a fat eighth or a fat quarter, you may have more or less deer. I'm going to assume that you have 3 deer, and I'm going to reserve my bottommost deer for candy dish. So I'm going to cut 2 deer from this and then 1 flower. So I'm going to go ahead and cut one like this, where I've got the face. I'm going to do the vertical one, and then I think this one lends itself more to up and to the left based off of the ear orientation. So I think that'll be my second one. And then that means that I still need up and to the right. So I will probably do either this flower or that flower. And then the same with my pink deer. And then my last one is these little chipmunks. And I am... let's see, we've got a couple different tails going in different directions and things, so we've got some options. So I will probably do my up and down one right there. And then this one looks like it would lend itself best to the up and to the right location. So that gives me my up and right and my vertical. And then, oh yeah, perfect. Then this little one is going to be my up and to the left. So I'm going to go ahead and take care of all that cutting and then show you how I think I'm going to lay things out. I've gone ahead and done all of my fussy cutting, and I decided to do 3 of each shape, as I mentioned, one pointing up to the right, and one pointing up to the left. And that's the amount that I have here from the 8 different fabrics. And I decided to have some additional space of background fabric to really make the fussy cut shapes pop. Generally, rock candy is done where all of the diamonds are the feature fabrics, and then the background is just the outside edge. For example, this one is like that. You can see this does have fussy cutting. I did the hands and the different tools, but the center is all the feature fabrics, and just the border is the background. For this one, I'm going to do it as you see on the back of the fussy cut shapes. So if you want to copy me here, you can reference the video, or you can just flip over your fussy cut shapes and you can see on the back exactly what I am doing right now. So either way, whether you are going to use background or more, I need to continue to fill in with my diamonds. So I have cut strips of my background fabric, and I'm going to cut my diamonds from these strips. Now, I could just take the fussy cut shape directly to the fabric, but since this fabric doesn't have something that needs to be fussy cut, it's just a polka dot, it's easier to first just cut your strip, then you just have to worry about cutting your 2 sides. So I'm just going to line it up close to the edge so I don't waste any. And cut. I'm just going to rotate it around to trim the other side. And I'm going to repeat that until I have all of these filled in with background. And then I also need my triangles to finish the outside. And I'm going to use the same strip. And I'm going to go ahead and use my fussy cut triangle shape. So I'm going to line that up. It's going to be a very similar process to with the diamond. And trim. In some patterns, it really helps to cut off all the triangles. Some, it's not as necessary. This one, it's not as necessary. So if you want to leave those, save a little bit of time, you can. If you want to trim them off, that is okay as well. We're going to fill in the background all with triangles. And the other option for cutting these is the original ruler referenced in the rock candy pattern, which is the Sidekick ruler. Some of you may have that. And so you would just cut it in the same manner that you usually do with the Sidekick. So line up the triangle and cut. And doing it this way doesn't naturally cut off those two, so you could either use the Fussy Cut Shapes, realign it under here, or in this case it really doesn't need to be trimmed off. And then to do the diamond, it's just a little bit more in on the ruler. And for this, I do want to trim those off, so I can either use this to trim off my sharp points, or I can use this to trim the sharp points. So I'm just going to line it up and trim, rotate it around, and trim. So I'm just going to continue all of that until I get all of this filled in. I'll be back in a couple days to go over sewing the wedges of the rock candy table topper and making sure to keep your pieces in the correct orientation. Thanks for tuning in here today. If this video was helpful, please leave a comment, like the video, and subscribe to this channel. On this channel, you'll find links to all of the Jaybird Quilts Fussy Cut Shape videos and some of my other sew-alongs that you might like. Sign up to receive the sew-along emails and worksheets at the link posted in the video description below. See you soon!